This morning. Right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Councillor Paul Heinrich. I'll be chairing the meeting of the Development Committee this morning. For anyone who hasn't attended one of these meetings before, the officers who provide and present our reports and offer technical advice sit either side of me at the top table. In front of me in the central area sit the members of the committee who will be making decisions on the items on the agenda. Can officers please introduce themselves?
Good morning, my name is Jeff Lyon. I'm the Development Manager.
I'm Emma Denny, I'm the Democratic Services Manager.
Joseph Barrow, Senior Planning Officer.
Isabel McManus, Trainee Planning Officer.
Mark Brown, Senior Planning Officer.
Fiona Croxton, Solicitor for the Council.
Thank you. Before we start the formal business, the usual short notices. In terms of fire alarms, we're not expecting a drill, so if the alarm sounds, it is for real. In that case, please follow officers via the marked exits and make your way to the car park in front of the building or to the flagpole at the rear. Do not use the lift. If you have a mobile phone, please switch it to silent or switch it off. We have a long agenda, so I expect to take a break for coffee at around 11. And we'll be provided wherever Democratic Services are putting it today. We will likely extend beyond lunch agenda, so lunch has been ordered for members sometime around 12:30. Toilets are out in the foyer. Apologies for absence, Emma.
We've received apologies for absence from Councillor M. Hankins, Gerard Mancini-Boyle and Adam Varley, and I have Councillor Liz Withington substituting for Adam Varley.
Thank you. To item 4 then, minutes of the meeting of the 22nd of June. I take it you've all read them. I'll just go through each page for any corrections and amendments. Page 1, page 2, page 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Now we're happy to confirm that those are an accurate record. Thank you. In terms of items of urgent business, we don't have any I'm aware of. Okay. Order of business, we made a slight change to the running order in that we will start with Cromer to enable the Leader of the Council to attend meetings, and then we will run in the order as shown. So if we can move to Cromer, Isabel. That is PF/23/0459 on your sheet.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, councillors. I am presenting application PF 230456, which is for a 2-storey side extension, single-storey rear extension, and the erection of an outbuilding to the rear in Cromer. The site location plan situates the application site within the principal settlement of Cromer and within a designated residential area. As shown on the aerial photo, it is accessed by Bernard Road to the west with a small access track running along the east of the application site, which serves a number of other nearby dwellings. As shown on the proposed site plan, there will be parking to the front and the rear. The proposed site plan shows the proposed extension and proposed outbuilding. This slide shows the existing elevations of the application dwelling. And depicted here is the existing floor plans of the application dwelling. And we now go to the proposed west and east elevations. And shown here is the proposed north and south elevations. In terms of the proposed materials, they are to be red clay pantiles, white UPVC windows, and red brickwork, which will match those of the existing dwelling, such that the extension will tie in visually with the existing dwelling and the street scene. This slide shows the proposed roof plan and floor plans. We now go to the proposed elevations and floor plans of the outbuilding. The walls would be clad in fibre cement weatherboarding in grey slate with solar panels on the north and south roof elevations. And a condition is recommended requiring the outbuilding to be only used for incidental purposes. I'll now go through some site photographs. So we now see the view from the west, indicating the location of the proposed two-storey side extension. We now see a view from the east, which highlights the proposed location of the extension, single-storey rear, and the outbuilding. And you will note there is already a small shed at the rear of the dwelling. And this is a view from the east as well, which is further up the garden, which again indicates where the extensions will be situated. This is a view looking north to the dwelling to the north of the application site and how it relates to the application dwelling. This is also a view looking east, and again you can see the proposed location of the outbuilding in relation to that is already on site. And we now look south to the dwelling, which is attached to the application dwelling, and how that will relate. We now go on to the main issues for the application, whether the proposed development is acceptable in principle, the effect on the surrounding area, the effect on residential amenity, and whether the proposed development would have any effect on highway safety. Today, the recommendation is for approval, subject to the conditions to cover the matters listed below and any other considered necessary by the Assistant Director Planning. Thank you.
Good morning. I'd like to stress that I'm speaking on behalf of the 11 residents surrounding this property that are all objecting to this proposal, basically on the principle of an overdevelopment. I'm not saying that extensions haven't taken place in and around this property. I myself extended my own house, which is 2 doors down, with a ground floor and upper floor extension and a rear extension, but the property remained as a 3-bedroomed property. And if you actually look at all the properties around its surrounding area, they are either 3 or 4-bedroom properties. A 6-bedroom property seems to be inappropriate and an overdevelopment considering all the surrounding properties. Regarding the car parking, as explained, there is a rear access to this building. It is a very muddy access and it is constantly being cut up with the amount of cars already using it. Extending the number of cars to actually use that will have a detrimental effect on this lane. To be honest, majority of people are single, or maybe a few have more than one car in this area, but this property has a potential of 3 cars and everything else. I think people should remember that this is a planning application for the building, not for the applicant. And people are obviously concerned about what the future use of a 6-bedroom property in a residential 3-bedroom area might turn out to be. I'm not saying that the current applicant will do that, but it may be sold in future times. Obviously, regarding the outbuilding, the outbuilding is recommended it can only be used for incidental purposes. I do hope that does mean that it's a non-residential use of this application. Sorry, I've just got a couple of other things that the question on the building is that there is a bathroom and 2 en suites. Three bathrooms for a property does not seem appropriate, and does seem to be an overdevelopment of this property. And as I said, I am not speaking on just my own behalf. I'm speaking on all the other residents in the area, and the 11 objections that came in for the initial application are still people are still objecting on the revised application. And as we've said, it will have a detrimental effect on properties in that area. As if people know the area very well, it's already very heavily used by cars in the summer. It's very difficult to park in that area. Okay, thank you.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak about 8 Bernard Road, Cromer. I am Carolyn Wright. I have lived and worked in Norfolk all my adult life, raising a farming family. Who are descended from Cromer fishing folk. I am a twin and a mother of 5 children, including twins, and now a grandmother of 2 boys and 3 more grandchildren expected this year. Anybody with experience of large families will know that when you go on holiday, you need a lot of bedrooms to accommodate all ages and stages of a developing family. Therefore, it will be necessary to make provision for family get-togethers and holidays. 8 Bernard Road was built in 1927 by the instruction of Mr. Ralph Turner, and the house remained in ownership of the Turner family until I bought it last year. The house and garden had fallen into disrepair in recent years, and I wish, with the help of my architect, to modernise with good design, sound structure, appearance and layout to bring it into our new Carolean age. Whilst it appears a large renovation, I feel it is reasonable because the house has had no extensions compared to neighbouring properties with a variety of extensions and outbuildings. Conversion of the loft space with dormer windows is an excellent use of existing space and will bring light and ventilation into the whole property and may become an art studio or creative space. All adjoining neighbours have a right to pass and repass over the 10-foot backway. Therefore, the design and layout of a garden room with solar panels and electric for charging vehicles will be in keeping with the garages and parking spaces already in the backway. It will also provide security for storing equipment and potting on plants, etc. More importantly, it will free up parking spaces on Cromer streets. Thank you for hearing my reasons for renovating this wonderful property. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we have both local members here. If you want to start, Tim.
Thank you, Chairman. So I seem to just have a little bit of feedback. There we go. That seems to be better now. Sorry. Oh, okay. Thank you, John. So I first of all wanted to say that this application is comparable to an application I previously called in just at the bottom of the road, Runton Road, PF 202569, which was refused. And it was a very, very similar application. I wanted to refer to the core strategy and the EM4 policy that proposals must make efficient use of land whilst respecting the density and character of the surrounding area, ensure that the scale and massing of buildings relate sympathetically to the surrounding area, and reference the design guide, ensuring that extensions have regard to the appearance of the host building. So as the previous public speaker stated in objection to the application, I don't think anyone's objecting to the principle of an extension, but this extension is not subservient to the host dwelling. It dominates it with a doubling of footprint and the addition as well of an outbuilding. I do believe it's out of keeping with the character and built form of the area. And it has, of course, been subject to numerous public objections relevant to this call-in, which states, among other things, that it is double in size and will have an overbearing impact. So that's all I really wish to say on this point. I know Jill wants to speak, but relatively simple issue really in terms of the the scale and massing and how that compares, whether the development is subservient to the host dwelling. It's a very significant extension, and the committee has considered that issue before in the nearby area. Thank you.
Thank you. Jill?
Thank you. Yes, I live locally, and so I know the area very, very well. And I feel that it is, although it's perfectly okay to extend the property, I feel that going up into the loft, the side and the back, and then putting extension or a room at the garden would be overdevelopment of the dwelling, and it will not be in keeping with the rest. There are extensions, but if you walk down that road, as I regularly do, it actually still has a flavour of originality. Everything has been very sympathetic in the way it's been done, and I don't object to an extension. I just feel that the scale of it is not in keeping with the rest of the properties. So I think that's my main concern. Okay.
System is not perfect. You finished. Okay. Before we show it to members, I believe a considerable part of this proposal could be done under permitted development rights. Is that correct, Isabel?
That would be the outbuilding.
The outbuilding
part.
only. That would not apply to the whole of the main extension. Okay, I just want to be clear on that point. So we knocked it around a bit at pre-meeting. Members, who wishes to go first? All very quiet.
Right, Mr. Chairman. Just the permitted development thing, and I don't wish to question the officers, just my understanding. Would if for example, it was just an extension to the rear with its size, would that have been allowed? What I'm saying is, could this have happened over a period in that someone, because I believe that if you've got a single floor extension, permitted development would allow you to go up as well now, is that right? So what I'm saying is, we've got something here, an application for something that could in time progress in that direction through permitted development. Does that make sense as a question? I don't know if. Thank you, Jeff.
I mean, on the subject of permitted development, as Councillor Heinrich said, it was more in question the rear building that we're talking about. It is close to permitted development. What you could do under permitted development, obviously the application before you isn't permitted development. So for your consideration, that's not necessarily directly relevant, because we're not at a point where you could say they could just do something slightly different that would be permitted. We're not at that particular point. So really for members, they need to assess how they would consider this proposal under their own policies, particularly policy EN4. I think that's been highlighted. That's the critical policy for your determination. So in terms of how you assess this scheme against that policy, our view is it accords with policy. I know there is concern about building a two-storey extension out to the side, but there are others in the area that have done that fairly close to the site. So it's not as if this is something that's completely different to what's happened elsewhere in the area. The neighbour to the north has I can see a single-storey extension attached on the side. So the idea of extending properties isn't something new or unique in this area, that people have done that. It's a question of what's the impact of that extension? Does it have a detrimental impact on amenity of neighbouring properties? Does it affect the character and appearance of the area in terms of your assessment on the policy EN4? Our view is that it doesn't. It does accord with policy EN4 and the aims of policy EN4. That's why a recommendation to you is that it should be approved. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Councillor Holiday.
Thank you, Chair. What's the distance between the extension and the nearby next door house? From the photographs, it looks as though it would be very close.
We don't have that answer immediately. If we can just take that away and get the response back, if the officer can get the response back to that, thanks.
A sequel that would be, is there overlooking from the closeness of the two properties?
So in terms of the proposed north elevation, there are two lower floor windows which would serve bathrooms. So there isn't sort of considered to be overlooking, and there's no upper floor windows proposed on that elevation.
Could you bring the aerial photograph of the angles? It's just useful to show the distances. I think if we look at it on the air photograph, save searching for other pictures and spending time. Any other member wish to speak? Go ahead, Angie.
I can understand the difficulties of this, Mr. Chairman, but realistically, I can't see that there would be any problem with the extension. And looking at the proposed siting of the ancillary building, there is development to the south of it, I think, if I've got my compass points correct. I know people are struggling with this one because of the local member and the near neighbour, but realistically, I do not see how he can refuse it. On what grounds? So I think I'm going to have to propose it, as nobody else is prepared to say anything.
Excellent, thank you, Angie. All very quiet this morning. Liz.
Morning. I picked up an early comment by the planning officer where she referred to the outline building as being for incidental purposes only. Is that intended to be a condition of this application so that it couldn't be at some point converted to holiday let or etc., which I would imagine will be some of the concern over the outbuilding?
Yes, it's recommended to be conditioned to be incidental and ancillary to the host dwelling. Weight cannot be given at this time to representations sort of relating to future rental accommodation, because that's not what is proposed before us with this application.
If I can just add to that, so we're assessing this as the dwelling, the extended dwelling, and the building in the garden as being part of a single planning unit. So it's all part of a single planning unit as a dwelling. Now, if that outbuilding were to be used for purposes, say, rented out as a separate holiday accommodation, that would amount to a material change of use and that would create a new planning unit. So that would require planning permission. That's not what's proposed here. We've got a condition on there limiting it to being ancillary to the use of the main house. So it's part of that single planning unit.
Councillor Fisher.
I just wondered if we could have a look at the proposed ground floor plans, please. Yes, I'm very.
You wish to comment further, councillor?
I think I'm happy to second the proposal.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Toy, yes, come back.
But yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I've already had a bite. I think the thing that for me the struggle is I understand the planning reasons, but to take a bedroom, a house from 3 bedrooms to 6 is huge, and you've got significant local objection, and that's why I think certainly for me the issue is to say, obviously there are planning rules, but is it the right decision given the context of everything that's in front of us as well with those objections, and are they valid? And that's why, for me personally, I like to listen to what people are saying locally. I'm not against the principle of the extensions and where it sits, but it does seem a huge leap to go from 3 to 6 bedrooms. If you did that anywhere, that seems like a huge leap, and I can understand people's objections. So yeah, I mean, I will probably end up going with supporting it, but I think that's the struggle for me, and perhaps why many are quiet, because we want to listen to what people say locally as well. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, we do have to make a decision based solely on planning grounds. That has to take priority over all other interests, unfortunately, at times. So,
Can I just
yes,
come back?
Liz.
I'm sorry, I know
Briefly.
I'd like John, I'm having 2 bites today. Having seen the proposed roof plan again, I'm just wondering, what has consideration been given to dark skies in terms of the roof lights will obviously be releasing light pollution?
Yeah, so the plan showed there's, I think, about 4 roof windows on that roof. Obviously the committee needs to be aware that someone could insert those roof lights without needing planning permission, is my understanding. So it's although the point about dark skies, I understand the point. Actually, as a committee, can we stop someone from inserting roof lights without needing permission anyway? And that's what we have to balance in our judgment. That's why we recommended approval.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody, and in particular to the residents who are attending today. Just a point of clarification, really, to establish that the access to the rear and any damage that may occur resulting from increased vehicular traffic is something which is not for the consideration of this committee. And any problems, should this be approved, arising from that would be wholly on the applicant to resolve with the owners of neighbouring properties. It was just something that the objecting speaker raised when he addressed us. There isn't really a breach of planning policy here. The mass is difficult to understand if you're a neighbouring property, and without great enthusiasm, I probably will just about support this.
Yes, and other people have another go.
Everyone's having another go, so I'm going to have one too. I do think it goes against EN4, actually. I don't think it's suitably designed for the context in which it's set. We don't have a really proper street scene here, but they look like very standard, lovely symmetrical houses all in a row, and you're going to make one look very different. And I think that's a great shame, because they're 1927, they're historical, they're very attractive, and I think it goes absolutely against EN4. Thank you.
Okay. Right, if nobody else,
Let me just come back on the private driveway
Oh.
point that Andrew asked, councillor Brown asked. Yeah, I understand a private driveway and parties would have easements over it and it would be between all the residents at the back to resolve and who has the right to pass and repass over it, and the state of the gravel and along there would be between the residents. I mean, there might be an amenity issue in planning terms if there were a lot of cars passing and repassing at the back at night, but certainly as regards the status of the back road, it would be between the residents who has the right to pass and repass and to control the state of the access way itself.
thank you. If nobody else wishes to add anything, we will go to the vote. Thanks very much, Emma.
Thank you, Chairman. Right, members, I will call out your names alphabetically, and if you can just indicate whether you wish to vote for, against, or abstain for the recommendation that has been proposed and seconded.
Yeah, okay, just to remind you, the recommendation is for approval, subject to the conditions set out on your papers.
So councillor Beatty,
For.
councillor Brown,
For.
councillor Fisher,
For.
councillor Fitch Tillett,
For.
councillor Heinrich,
For.
councillor Holiday, councillor MacDonald,
For.
councillor J Toy,
For.
councillor K Toy,
For.
councillor Vickers,
For.
and councillor Withington.
For.
So that's 10 in favour and 1 against, Chairman.
The application is approved. Moving on then to item 8 on your agenda, Haysborough PF/22/2510, access to Lighthouse Lane to serve existing public car park and new car park to allow for rollback of existing car park. We have a considerable number of speakers there, so we will have the presentation and then I'll ask speakers to be succinct when we get to them. Joe, I believe you're doing this one. Yep. Enjoy your little tour. Yeah. Technology is fine when it works properly. When you're ready, Joe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, councillors. Good morning, everybody. Yes, this application item 8 on the agenda is PF 22/2510, and it is the erection or laying out, sorry, of an access track linking the existing Beach Road car park facility in Haysborough, and then the subsequent provision of car parking spaces to replace those which are likely to be lost due to coastal erosion. The site location plan is currently before you. You'll currently notice in the sort of the top right-hand corner of that, the current access point and how close the coast is in proximity to that. That is the main reason for this application. It is that access point which is most at threat from coastal erosion imminently, and loss of that access point would render the current car park unusable. The blue line across that plan is the 100-year coastal erosion constraint line. Obviously, that's a best prediction, but that's where the coast would be sort of expected to be in 100 years, 100 years time. The proposed layout is before you there. So the access track there runs across the south side of the site before arcing and then accessing the current car park in its northwest corner. The spaces there are 74 spaces overall. That's inclusive of 6 disability accessible spaces and 5 spaces for motorbikes. You'll note that all of those spaces are provided well inside that or outside the 100-year constraint line. The green area on the map there is an area of landscaping and ecological buffer zones and enhancements. That's detailed in the ecological report and involves sort of the planting of scrubs that will scrubs and hedgerows and various other things that will serve a purpose in terms of quite a reasonable habitat provision, as well as also providing some amenity screening for those properties both on Lighthouse Lane to the west and the Beach Road to the north. The comments have also been raised throughout the assessment period relating to the potential for sort of antisocial behaviour in use of the car park as unintended. It has been agreed with the applicants that a gate could certainly be provided and maintained as is sort of the current operation, as well as opening hours and prohibition of overnight camping and parking conditions. Those are conditions and restrictions that are all agreeable. So the situation and use of the car park would remain as currently operates. Just again, in terms of providing councillors and members of the public with a little bit of context as to the reason for the application, just moving through some aerial footage. I know that Haysborough is quite well documented in terms of the erosion pressures that we face there, but you'll notice sort of the coastal retreat from this static image point there to the current position. It's predicted and sort of estimated at the moment that the current distance between the access point and the cliff is something not really exceeding 15 metres. So sort of quite a turbulent storm maybe in winter could put us at quite some risk of losing that access point. So the key elements of the proposal are the provision of the new access drive. The application will be focusing on sort of providing that imminently and quickly so as to ensure the current use of the existing car park, sorry. The new spaces are only to be delivered and used when the existing car park is rendered unsafe. That is so that we are not providing any additional spaces onto the network, and we're not providing any additional demand for trips into Haysborough and to the car park itself. You've got the ecological enhancements to the north and west. It is also agreed that some screening will be planted along the south boundary, just to protect and just to separate it off from the agricultural land, and also visually screen the setting of the lighthouse and the rural area. A grasscrete surface is to be used throughout. This is to ensure appropriate drainage and is in line with our coastal erosion policies. And of course, the proposal is supported by the council's coastal erosion rollback policies and would ensure that we could retain access to the deep history coast, Norfolk Coast Footpath, the lighthouse, and the important case study and destination that Haysborough can be, as well as a good quality beach. Much of the report discusses the highway network, and highway safety is a key issue, and the relationship is one that should be explored. We've sort of gone through that quite extensively in the report, but the key points of the network are there for you. The site area obviously outlined in red. what we'll do is go through a lot of the junctions and sort of the indicative photos of what that network would look like and the choices that motorists are largely faced with, really. So first of all is the Beach Road and Wimpwell Street junction. This junction is currently used by most traffic that accesses the Beach Road car park. It is the one which currently has signage for Beach Road Park access, and it is anticipated that this signage would not change, and behaviours would likely remain that this would be the primary access point to get off Wimpwell Street and move towards the Beach Road car park. That's the from Wimpwell Street there, and you can see on the left-hand photo the signage on the island which directs people down Beach Road for car park access. The second junction for consideration is the Lighthouse Lane and Beach Road junction. This junction, it's anticipated, would have increased use as part of this application, as all traffic that would have previously travelled down Beach Road will now turn right down Lighthouse Lane so as to access the car park. Of course, that will reduce demand and trips from Beach Road itself. So the sort of, in practice, the priority of that junction and may change. Yeah, this is one junction where we are introducing extra trips and extra movements. And then you can see how that junction appears from Beach Road itself. The last junction sort of for main consideration is the Wimpwell Street Lighthouse Lane junction. Critical on this one is the width of Lighthouse Lane and its suitability in terms of providing vehicular access to the car park itself. Lighthouse Lane is very narrow and is a much longer distance than the Beach Road current access is. What the position of the council largely is also understanding that motorists currently do have a choice. If they're arriving into Haysborough from Lessingham, they could use Lighthouse Lane to access Beach Road and visit the current car park. That position does not change. And motorists will still be left with that choice with the new car park location. And just further in terms of that visibility. So in terms of how Beach Road and Lighthouse Lane appear, Beach Road currently, as you can see, is single track. In practice, many locals' driveways are used as passing places. If indeed you do travel down to that car park, there are some informal agricultural accesses and other sort of areas off to the side of the road, but by and large, it is residents' driveways that provide most of the passing place provision informally. The Lighthouse Lane photos here, the access point would be approximately opposite this barn on the right-hand side. That's where the proposed access would be. And the photo on the left shows is representative of the situation in Lighthouse Lane up to that access point. Following that access point, as you'll notice as well from the sharp bend on the right, it is fair to say that Lighthouse Lane is of quite a poor standard. Again, residents could still make the choice, or also visitors can still go down this road should they choose at present. But we anticipate that most visitors won't and do not. They will largely use the Beach Road access. So this is the access point from the existing car park looking across the land, and sorry to sort of change your seasons and make you all feel cold there, but yes, that's where the car park as existing would be accessed looking back towards Haysborough with the spaces provided in the ecological buffer there. You'll also note the existing facilities, the toilet facilities, the play area just in the background to the left. Those facilities can be retained as this application proposes the retention of this car park until it is rendered unsafe. And again, just further noticing that gate provision, again, the willingness to provide a similar gate for the new access point to prohibit overnight use. And there you are, there's the site sort of from Lighthouse Lane looking on the left-hand side there. You've got the backs of the properties on Beach Road and the car park itself to the very rear of that photo. The recommendation put before you, councillors, is one of approval with a quite extensive list of conditions attached. Those conditions relate around controlling the additional demand we're putting through the highway network. We are not wishing to put any additional demand into the network. Another crucial thing is trying to encourage and control traffic movements out of the car park. I'll be more than happy to go back to the other plan, but ideally we're looking at encouraging use of the access to only turn right out of the car park. So the long section of Lighthouse Lane, which we acknowledge is of a poor standard, is discouraged from being used. This is about trying to ensure that the parts of the network we are introducing trips to is controlled and is a part of the network that currently handles a fair few, other than, of course, the new section of Lighthouse Lane to the north, which we acknowledge we would be introducing trips to. Also, as discussed, number of spaces not to exceed 74, car park opening hours and access gates, and prohibition of overnight camping, as well as any other technical highway conditions that would be recommended subsequently by the highway officer. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Joe. We move to speakers. I have David Mole from the parish. You off the front, please.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm David Mole. I'm Chair of Haysborough Parish Council. We've always had car park in Haysborough. We've always had tourism in Haysborough. We've had access to the beach. At the moment, we've got toilets, play space, ramp down there, and a car park. If we lose the car park, we lose all the reasons for doing those other things, and it will be, in my opinion, quite a blow to the village. It's not a perfect solution in any way. We've had to do it this way. There is some small benefits in that the properties on Long Beach Road will then won't have the car park traffic going past their doorways. However, of course, it will be going behind them. We're not increasing the car park. We're not making more money. We're just maintaining a very, very useful asset. The car parks, they're all along the coast. There's Cartgap, there's Bacton, there's Walcott, there's ours. They're all fully used. People want to come to the coast. People come by car. They need to park. One of my colleagues will probably speak later on about how devastating it will be if people don't have a car park. They'll be all over the place. I imagine they'll still want to come to the coast. The erosion, of course, we all know, creeping forward all along the coast, and we're going to lose this driveway. Probably not this year, maybe in the next year, but it's very, very imminent. The distance is only, I think you quoted 15 meters. It's very small. When it gets less than so much, it will be actually physically unsafe. We must move, we must be ready. Small point, the gate we already close and open to suit opening hours, to suit daylight times. This, of course, would carry on. We want to try and work sympathetically with the local people. It's one of these expressions, it's overriding public benefit, I think we could quote. That's about all I think I have to say. The erosion, we're working sympathetically. We're trying to mitigate it with some planting and access. And of course, we'd hold by all the conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. I have two objecting speakers. I'll take them in the order on my sheet. Paul Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Like most objectors to this proposed development, my objections centre on the unsuitability of Lighthouse Lane as an access route and on consequent amenity disturbance to its residents. Shockingly, the original planning statement didn't even mention these issues. The officer's report on that presentation, which we've just had, at least considers them, but doesn't consider them fairly, in my view. The officer's report acknowledges that the Highways Authority objects to the proposed new route on grounds of suitability and safety, but argues that that recommendation could be ignored as per paragraph 111 of the MPPF because there wouldn't be an unacceptable impact on public safety. That might be the case if the Highways Authority's judgment were finely balanced, but in fact it is unequivocal. The proposed route would be unsuitable and unsafe and therefore not acceptable. The report repeats the applicant's claim that the proposed new route is no more narrow and shorter than the existing route and so represents an improvement in road safety. However, the Highways Authority disagrees, saying effectively that you have to consider the full context when comparing risk. As for amenity, the report tries to offset the loss of amenity for residents of Lighthouse Lane against improvements for residents of Beach Road, concluding that there would be no overall loss of amenity in the area. This is not a fair argument, however. Beach Road has been the access route to beach parking for decades, so its residents have chosen to live there in that knowledge. Residents of Lighthouse Lane, by contrast, have chosen to live in a quiet lane. I am dismayed that the officer's report makes no mention of the plight of the unfortunate residents who would be living immediately opposite the junction where the new access track meets Lighthouse Lane. One of them is my mother. Through much of the year, these residents would be subjected to the chaos of vehicles converging from multiple directions, all jostling to make progress in a congested space right next to their home. No one in Beach Road currently has to put up with that, nor should anyone in Haysborough. The report repeats the applicant's argument that the only alternative to their proposed development is no car park, resulting in loss of benefits for the village. Not the case. Haysborough Parish Council simply need to devise a better
I have to stop you at that point.
proposal
Your
that
3
is
minutes
safe.
is up. Apologies. Second objecting speaker, Francis Batt. Sorry. Okay, your 3 minutes starts from the point you start speaking. Your 3 minutes will start from when you start speaking, so there's no problem.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I understand and agree that Haysborough need a car park somewhere. When it was first requested for the car park to be moved, the district council asked for at least 3 feasible sites to be put forward. This was never enforced, and the PC continued with rollback option only. This location has been refused twice now by the Highways Development. Lighthouse Lane is inadequate to take the volume of traffic due to its restricted width. The 2 T-junctions, one, the Wimpwell Street, has inadequate visibility. And 2, Beach Road, Lighthouse Lane is too narrow to accommodate 2 cars to pass and inadequate visibility. Pedestrians would not have a path or access to walk safely. At present, when walking along Beach Road, walkers can at least move into a private residence drive out the way of traffic, which is a regular occurrence. Whereas in Lighthouse Lane, there will be no such safety refuge, especially as the lane narrows considerably further on. Bearing in mind there would be a vast number of vehicles using this lane in and out at the same time, especially at the height of summer in the holidays. As an example, the other year, Wimpwell Street was closed off for a day due to hanging water repairs. This caused gridlock in Lighthouse Lane to the point that the police were called to manage the traffic, and this was not in holiday season. I believe that other options need to be readdressed and investigated for longevity and safety for the residents and the visitors of Haysborough. If, though, the majority vote is to go ahead with this development, may I suggest that the entrance into Beach Road from the street, Wimpwell Street, is made into a one-way system along Lighthouse Lane and exiting the other end into Wimpwell Street. Also to cut back into the bank along Lighthouse Lane to make it wider, and further along it narrows even more. So a pedestrian footpath installed on the other side of the bank for safety would be good. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Right, we have two supporting speakers, Joe Birchall.
Good morning. My name is Jo Beardshaw. I'm the responsible finance officer and parish clerk for Haysborough Parish Council. I do not live in the village. Just to give you a bit of background of the finances here, the parish council took in that first year, the lease was taken over from North Norfolk District Council on the 1st of June 2012. And in that first year, parish council took something in the region of £21,000 income. In the COVID years, it took nearer to £100,000 of income. Last year, about 85,000. About 50% of that is spent in the local community and the slightly wider community in terms of salaries, maintenance, the general running of the car park itself. And then about 50% is saved for this application for the rollback of the car park to try and retain the sort of thriving economy that there is in the village. So there's now about £160,000 in the pot to pay for this gradual rollback. As you know, the urgent element of it is the track, and secondary very much is the rolled back car park. In terms of consultation, the parish council had an extraordinary parish council meeting in November of 2020, at which it was unanimously agreed to go forwards with these plans. At that time, there were two councillors with pecuniary interests who obviously didn't vote. In November of 2021, there was then a village-wide consultation. The parish council would say that its consultation has been wide and lengthy. Just to go back to conditions that Joe had spoken about, the parish council is keen to work with any conditions that North Norfolk might put upon it in terms of the highway, the signage package, the makeup of the track and the roadway in that junction. Absolutely entirely flexible in that regard. And the only other thing to say is the urgency of the access to the track. I'm told, I'm not professional on it, but Rob Goodliff would tell you that the council could be one good storm away from losing the access to the car park itself. Thank you.
Thank you. And the final supporting speaker present today, Thomas Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am the landowner and I have been a parish councillor for 30 years. I was approached in 2010, I think, for the car park to be built on the land. And when I said yes, I was asked to allow for the expansion of the car park to the rear for obvious erosion. It wasn't intended to be happening in 13 years' time, but we have all been surprised by the what's been happening to the coast. Regarding other car parks, we have looked at other places to put it. And the only one that was really agreed with was one that was 3/4 of a mile away from the cliff. I'm very strongly against it because it would mean people not walking down the path, but across my fields. I already get enough people going across my cereal crops and sugar beet crops and potato crops because it's the shortest way. But if we have a car park away from the cliff, it will mean even more of that. I think we need to look at what we've invested in the car park. The toilet block, which was award-winning, cost, I think, you £110,000. If there's no entry to the car park, it becomes unusable. Our play area cost the parish council £22,000, and it would cost more. So, and laying of the car park, which is still going to be used, costs a considerable amount of money, which you again paid for. To just throw them away by not allowing access to these important holiday recreational areas would be a shame. And I hope that you will allow this, because Haysborough and the coastal villages need to get cars off the roads into car parks to allow for easy access for the other roads, because our roads aren't very wide. Thank you.
Thank you. Local member, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Chairman. I understand this is a difficult decision, but sadly it's part of living with a transitional coastline. I believe this amenity is essential, and a lot of the villages being rural, arriving by public transport is not a viable option for the surrounding villages. So they need a car park, and I think access to exercise on the beach and the playground should not be lost. You know, especially looking at the cost of living crisis. If this amenity is lost, that's an affordable day out. A day on the beach, walking, playing and exploring, fossil hunting. I also think the loss of the car park will put a lot of pressure on nearby street parking. I believe the officer's taken a very balanced view of the application, and I would support his opinion.
Thank you. There's a number of issues raised there. Jeff, could you just give us the rationale for the rollback policies, so that new members in particular are clear on this issue of rollback?
In terms of the actual car park itself, so I don't know where, maybe Joe may be better to answer that because he's been involved directly in this particular application. I'll ask Joe to answer that question, please, Joe.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think a crucial policy in this case in the local plan is EN12, which sort of controls the relocation of community facilities and commercial and business uses that are considered important to the well-being of a coastal community. There's a list of criteria that are specified within that policy, and that's on page 27 of the report pack. Some of those criteria sort of, is it threatened from erosion within 50 years, for example? Well, we know that this is much more imminent than that. Does the rollback allow for get the development outside of the constraint area? We know we're beyond that blue line, so it does do that. And then the subsequent rendering safe and managed retreat of any other infrastructure. So although not part of this application, it's perceived that it would be more than appropriate for subsequent applications to roll back the toilet facilities and play area in future.
Thank you. Councillor Blathwaite, in your
Yeah.
position.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm Harry Blathwaite. I am the portfolio holder for Coast. And that means that I am the portfolio holder for Coastwise. And on my right is Officer Rob Goodliff, who is here to help if there's any technical questions regarding this. I'd just like to say that this is significant regarding rollback principles. And I'd like to praise the Parish Council of Haysborough for its far-sighted views on this matter. Rollback is unfortunately a necessity, and as a council, we must view this as a way of facilitating it. It is a principle that will be all the way down the coast, not just at Haysborough. I would argue that the Highways objections on this matter are viewing the problem at a 360-degree problem, whereas it's not even 180 degrees. We're looking at 100 to 80 degrees problem here, where the road will be washed away and access to the car park will be lost if action is not taken with extreme speed. And I would look for this well-known committee for its good sense to take this into consideration. I believe the traffic problems and dangers are nothing compared to what they will be if there is no accessible car park at Haysborough. As we know, holidaymakers and visitors will beat a path to the coast, and they will beat a path through private land, and they will beat a path whichever way is the quickest. So I really beseech this committee to view this application generously, and I hope you will support it and support the officers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I certainly agree with the urgency. My own observations is that the rate of erosion of those cliffs is actually increasing. My own view from a geographer by origin is that we've probably got 5 years before the current access is lost, and quite likely a lot less. This is an urgent matter. Members. Angie, you have a go at it.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'm Councillor Angie Fitzgerald, and way back in 2011, I was portfolio holder for coastal management. The then Labour government accepted that defending all of our coast was not going to be possible, and we were given a large amount of money called Pathfinder to establish ways of managing our coast. Pathfinder actually put life back into Haysborough. We used that as a whole community. Up until then, Haysborough was blighted because of the coastal erosion. And one of the things that we produced through Pathfinder was the car park, with the obvious thought that in the future, probably 20 years, 30 years, there might be a problem. Now, as we've heard today, with sea level rise, more dramatic storms, the erosion rate there has happened much quicker than we thought. For example, part of Pathfinder, we built an access ramp to the beach so that people could still enjoy the beach. That has had to be reprofiled 3, if not 4 times. It has been redone again in the last 12 months. So it's absolutely crucial for the lifeblood of Haysborough and for the rest of the coast. Talking about the Deep History Coast, that is where the footprints were found at Haysborough. There are hand axes found at Haysborough. It is the most significant place archaeologically. There must be access and parking access to this beach. I have huge sympathy with the people on Lighthouse Lane, but however, there are many sites in our coastal zone where vehicles and pedestrians mix. They do tend to respect each other, and we will do everything I think we can do to actually minimise any form of danger to them. Now, I obviously don't think I can vote on this because as portfolio holder, again, up until just recently, Haysborough has been part of my life for the last 20 years. But I just wanted to make it perfectly clear to, particularly to the new members, how vital this is. Thank you.
Thank you. Kim.
No doubt that there is a new car park that's needed so that people can still have access. I'll keep it short, but I don't know how we can justify that the residents in Water Lane are going to pay the price for that. I was only down there 2 weeks ago, never been there, never spent any time in Haysborough, but it was lovely, really, really nice. And if I was a resident, I would not be very happy at all. Now, if there's some plan to make that access better, because it is a lane, that's why it's called a lane, then I would sit more comfortably with it. But at the moment, I just don't think it's right. There should be alternative locations investigated and put forward.
I understand there aren't alternative locations that not would give access to the beach. However, there's clearly an issue around the access in Lighthouse Lane. I note that in the list of conditions, we are asked to consideration of this by the Assistant Director of Planning. The approved plans included the design of the Belmouth to the car park. We have discussed how that could be designed to prevent traffic turning left and going back south on Lighthouse Lane, which is incredibly narrow, very sharp blind bend at the end. Clearly would not want traffic to go that way. How can we ensure that there is better design of the access? Can we talk to Highways about any improvements?
Yeah, I mean, certainly if members were minded to do so, you could condition that the design of that Belmouth is a matter to be agreed with the Highway Authority and the local planning authority. There are examples across the country of situations where you engineer a situation that prevents people from going in a particular direction. So it's not a novel or a new issue. It's been done elsewhere across the country. So yes, I think it's perfectly reasonable, and I understand the applicant is willing to work with the local planning authority and the higher authority to achieve that. So that, together with an appropriate signage strategy to ensure that people know where the route they should be going to get to the site, will all help to eliminate those situations where you'll have traffic conflicting with each other and pedestrians. So I think that's perfectly reasonable.
Do you feel existing wording covers that adequately, or should it be strengthened?
I mean, the wording, if you look on the bottom of page 32 of the report, I mean, it's with condition 2 talks about approved plans, including the design of the Belmouth, and we could have a specific condition separate to the approved plans list, which requires details of that design to be agreed in writing with the local planning authority. So we can add that as a separate condition if that's considered appropriate by members.
Would members be happy with that? Indication, please. Yeah. I'll come back to you. I've got Councillor McDonald first.
Yeah, I know that the highways were against it, and then after the amendments were made, the highways were still against it. I want to know how much weight and we put on that when we make a decision that they're still against it. Also, is there any way we can look into what the lady speaker suggested about a one-way system? That sounded like a possible solution to me. Thank you.
Joe?
Obviously, at this moment in time, a one-way system isn't part of the proposal. I suppose it's a matter of understanding what would the implications of having to secure that one way, and that would be a traffic regulation order that would be required to secure a change to the highway network. Now, there's not always a guarantee that a TRO will come in the way that you may want. So there may be objections to a TRO, because if you're a resident on Lighthouse Lane, you may not want to be restricted to be going one way down the road. So TROs isn't guaranteed that the Highway Authority will agree to that, but it is a possibility to explore that. Obviously, that's a matter for the applicant to, I mean, obviously the applicants are here, so whether it's a question that you wanted to, for you, Chair, to pose back to the applicant, whether that's something they would be prepared to consider, because if that's a way of addressing members' concerns and resolving local issues, then I think it would be a sensible thing to explore if that's possible.
Could I ask the parish representative whether that would be something to consider? I was saying the idea of a one-way system to be progressed with county highways, would that be something you might wish to consider?
You want to come to the front?
Yes, come to the microphone.
Okay. We thought about, you mentioned a one-way system. It's trying to keep the traffic up. We realise Lighthouse Lane is narrow and bendy, and there's a very sharp bend at the bottom there, and the access to Wimpwell Street isn't perfect. Whereas the short length of Lighthouse Lane that we'd like to encourage traffic to use, the short length between Beach Road and our proposed entrance, is one that we could possibly improve and make it a better route than a one-way system, which I think someone's already mentioned is take an awful lot of resources to set up a one-way system and signage, and I think you possibly have to have some sort of bylaws, I don't know, on that. So we have looked and we thought our solution was a bit better. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Passing places, Jeff, would that be another thing?
Yeah, it wasn't on the list of conditions because we considered that it wasn't necessary for the short duration of the route back to Beach Road from Lighthouse Lane. Obviously, members take a different view on that, then by all means we can have that discussion with the applicant to explore passing places. But as I say, we didn't, when one compares it with Beach Road where there are equally no passing places, it's not necessarily a dissimilar situation to go down Lighthouse Lane. So that's why we hadn't specifically requested passing places on here.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I don't think anybody's arguing with the need to resite this car park, obviously. What I don't see in the report is perhaps some analysis of the size of the car park, that it needs to be like for like, that, you know, 74 spaces are justified. Obviously, traffic in and out of the car park is going to be seasonally affected. Not very much has been said about that. In comparison to traffic flow, what we've got here is a fairly even spread currently down Beach Road. We're trading it for an intense usage over 118 metre stretch from the entrance to the proposed car park northwards towards Beach Road and then into Wimpwell Street. The junction currently used with Beach Road and Wimpwell Street is far superior to that which will be used when it's resited if we approve it at the junction of Lighthouse Lane and Beach Road. That's an issue for me. I don't know whether, and I accept that the bell mouth is something that we're probably getting that's an improvement on what exists currently at the entrance to the current car park. So that's a positive. So there's like a diminishing stream of traffic. The further south you go on Lighthouse Lane, it's probably going to be not as well used as at the northern end. So I don't know what property is going to be absolutely opposite the Bellmouth entry, but I would have thought that to the southern side of that entrance, perhaps some sort of chicane giving priority to the direction of traffic from the south to deter traffic going south and putting it to the north. I don't know if the same landowner can offer up some passing places on Lighthouse Lane. That concerns me. Members of the committee, if you can just imagine being a resident in Lighthouse Lane and vehicles using the end of your driveway as a passing place, that might occur in Beach Road currently, but that doesn't mean it needs to be justified with the new scheme on Lighthouse Lane. So I would ask some sort of legal agreement between the parish council and ourselves to provide passing places if that's possible, and also even go further to look at upgrading the junction at the southern end of Lighthouse Lane with Wimpole Street, which we've seen is pretty substandard, and make it more akin to the junction off Wimpole Street onto Beach Road, which we can see from the photographs is much wider. So those are my issues. Unfortunately, I don't know whether this is a requirement or a duty on the Highway Authority. They've quite rightly, in my view, said they've got some concerns, but they haven't come up with alternatives or schemes that might improve. That may be a necessity on the parish council to provide a better traffic impact report than what we've seen. I haven't looked on the planning portal to see what has been submitted. I apologise if that's already been submitted, but at the moment, I find it rather difficult to support this, to be honest.
Yeah, Councillor Tory.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm struggling with the irony of this, in that we're facing coastal erosion and it's rapidly increasing, partly caused by cars. So we're going to provide facilities for cars. That doesn't make sense to me at all. And reading EN 12, it's about replacement of community facilities. Now, we've heard how the community may benefit from its income and how half of that income from the car park probably gets spent locally, probably cleaning the toilets and maintaining bits and pieces. It hasn't told me how much of the visitor economy affects the village. I've got no details on that. And in fact, 2 miles down the road is Cart Gap car park for cars, where people could walk along and do the deep history coast stuff. So if it was moving of the toilets and the park for the children as a community facility, I would get that. I would absolutely get that. And that could be moved there and cause no issues. But to do this, to continue increasing car use and encouraging it, is not right. And I can't support it. I can't support it. We shouldn't be doing this. The money that they've been making, instead of being put away to use this, and I can't tell the parish council what to do, but they perhaps could have engaged with the bus companies to see if they can improve bus services. It's not an answer. We're just increasing the issue, and it's been caused by car use. Yet we want to keep using cars. I'm sorry, I can't support it.
Okay. Of course, visitors will travel by car regardless of what we say, and they will park wherever they can. Well, an alternative would be viable. I very much doubt that, I'm afraid. I would remind you that the recommendation is for approval, but with much delegation of conditions to the director. If there are serious concerns about how we handle the traffic issues, then it is open for members to seek a deferral for further investigation on that. So I'll leave that for you, Victoria.
I totally concur with councillor Toy about the use of cars, and we should not be encouraging, we should be discouraging car use on the coast and coming up with innovative ways to manage that. And simply because we haven't got buses doesn't mean that we can't have buses. So I'm really uncomfortable with continuing to provide coastal car parks. I do worry about the transport. I think that's the transport network. I think that's really difficult. And the community seems to be very split on this. There's a petition of 95 names against it. There's 25 objections and the parish council's for it. So there's a lot of objections in the community. So I'm not comfortable with this in the least. Thank you.
Okay. Liz.
Thank you. I mean, I think this situation is indicative of perhaps what we are going to be facing in many areas along that coastal stretch in particular. So how we deal with this one is going to be quite important as to how we move forward in the future. For me, there's the issue of the access to the beach, and I think Councillor Fitch-Tillett alluded to this, not only in terms of the tourism impact of people being able to get down there, but also I'm sure Officer Goodliff can inform if this is correct. I do believe we need access onto that beach in order that we can continue our coastal management. And as I understand it, this all forms part of that as well. So I'd like some clarification on that. I am concerned in terms of the highways issues, and it doesn't feel to me, as Councillor Brown said, that the highways have objected, but they haven't come up with what you could do, which I think would be helpful. Like obviously the residents of Lighthouse Lane and also councillors here, I am concerned it might be a short stretch, but that tight area, that poor junction, I don't think we're necessarily considering putting in the appropriate situation in terms of the passing places. So my feeling at the moment is I, as a councillor, would like to know more about the potential for some further highways consideration.
Are you proposing deferral for that?
I'm happy to propose that, yeah.
Okay.
Chair, I'm quite happy to second the deferral.
Okay, thank you. Do we need to debate that further? Yeah. We need to just be clear on what aspects we wish to consider in more detail before it's brought back to committee. So just yeah, I think we probably both understand. But,
Okay, so just so obviously reading the debate we've had so far, I'm sensing, obviously setting aside the principle of relocating the car park and the sort of reinforcing continued car use, your members are concerned about the impact on Lighthouse Lane and making sure that the access routes from Beach Road to the car park entrance, we can explore options to make that as safe as possible and have the access so we dissuade people from turning left out to Lighthouse Lane, and to try and manage the impacts on those residents that are most affected. So I think we can have that discussion with the parish council to work out what can we reasonably achieve to make this the best we possibly can to enable the committee to support the principle of the development here. So we can go away on that basis. If that's how members want to take it forward, we can go on that basis.
okay, we have a proposal. Okay, so, you want to come in?
I think in terms of asking for a restrictive bell mouth that prohibits movements left, and then subsequently asking for off-site highway works to the south of that restrictive bell mouth is an interesting relationship to sort of explore. There's certainly scope to improve the network. Absolutely, we completely agree with that, and more than happy to go away and do so. But I think it might be maybe sort of, if we're prohibiting turns in and out of that car park to the south, but also looking at off-site highway works to the south, I don't know if that's maybe a sensible approach, particularly.
So I see it as a sense of going out and exploring what's possible, what's reasonably possible to make this development acceptable in planning terms, and we'll explore that with the parish council. And we can come back to the next available committee to hopefully have a way forward that majority of members feel is satisfactory. Okay.
Please.
Could we also have some clarity from the coastal management team about what the impact is in terms of that for us as well? I'd like to be clear on that.
You want to comment, Councillor Blaisdell? Well,
Sorry. Yeah, so the beach access there, I'm not the coastal engineer. I was coastal manager. I'm now coastal transition manager. But the beach access there is obviously cut for sort of public recreation, but it is used for managing the rock armour and debris, etc., on the beach. So obviously, if we lose the access to the ramp there, it's going to, one, be very difficult to recut the ramp for getting plant to the site. Secondly, it's more difficult to get onto the beach to do works. It can be accessed from Cart Gap to the southeast, although it is a longer distance, obviously, to transport and take vehicles and plant, etc. And obviously to then park up safely, sort of in periods when you are working. It is possible, but it's not necessarily the most desirable way to do that. So it would obviously pose challenges. Obviously the access as well, when it is lost, I was stood there with the senior coastal engineer earlier this year looking at that, and we were thinking, well, actually this could be made dangerous at any time, sort of following a storm event. See, erosion rates vary year on year. We have seen it lose 13 metres in 1 month before at Haysborough in a particular location, so it can be quite catastrophic. Obviously, with that that access to the car park loss, it also loses the sort of access to sort of the play area from that side, the beach access ramp from that side as well. So I think there's a solution needs to be found to provide access in some way. Historically, the car park was placed there after community discussions back in sort of from 2010 to 2011. And that was because people recognised at that time that, there was a need for visitor services and infrastructure, and it needed to be near the coast, because that's why ultimately they were coming to Haysborough. So I'll probably stop there.
okay, thank you. Oh, yeah. Yes, go.
Could I just request that the officer puts on the slide with the blue line showing where the coast will be in the very foreseeable future, and that will concentrate your mind on exactly what the future is that you are planning for.
Thank you. Yes, I said earlier, the speed of erosion there is quite frightening now.
Yeah, just so you're aware, the coastal path will be lost, and what you're actually planning for here is all about coastal connectivity and the connectivity of the coastal path, and the line of the road that you are considering will be the line of the new coastal path as it falls back. Thank you.
Yep. Right, we have a proposal from Councillor Withington, seconded by Councillor Brown, to defer decision pending further negotiation regarding the access issues and the traffic and highways matters around Lighthouse Lane and Beach Road. We also, I think, will need to consider the issues raised in terms of critical need for access to the beach to deal with coastal management issues. Does that cover everything from your point of view, Jenna? Okay, so proposal is for deferral. Can we go to the vote, please, Emma?
Thank you, Chairman. As previously, I call out your names alphabetically, but I won't call out yours. So if you could indicate for, against, or abstain for deferral, please. So Councillor Beattie.
For.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Fisher.
For.
Councillor Heinrich.
For.
Councillor Holiday. Councillor MacDonald.
For.
Councillor Netherway.
For.
Councillor J Toy,
Against.
Councillor K Toy. 4. Councillor Vickers. 4. And Councillor Withington. 4. So
Thank you.
that is 10 in favour of development.
Thank you. So the application is deferred for the pending further investigation of the issues as identified. Thank you very much for all the public attending. We'll take a 15-minute break now before we dive into what could be another long one. Thank you.